I'm Jacki Smith. It's my shindig. And so this part of our, this is the last presentation today, and then we get to relax and act a fool.
Yeah.
And time for some chairs.
In fact, I think we're gonna sit.
I think that's a great idea. If we both lean on the table, it's gonna go.
Yes, it is. I bet have us sitting on tables, and I don't think that one's gonna support me.
I only got it at seat.
Yeah, we're better off here.
So we thought we would do Ask a Witch. Now, granted, in my mind, as I was planning this out, we had standing room only. So you guys have our full attention.
Yes.
And which is it? Questions? Do you have any questions? Anything that you're wondering about? Because one of the things that both Dorothy and I experience whenever we go to an event is that we do our presentation, and then when things are all over, there's a lineup of about 20 people, and they all have a question completely irrelevant to whatever we were talking about.
Yeah, and so this way, nothing's irrelevant, but this is an interactive class. And if you don't interact with us, this is like a video game. We're just going to blink at you, okay? so I hope y'all brought questions.
I was waiting for other people's questions. I was waiting for other people's questions.
Oh, yeah. No. Don't you have one?
How much do you guys follow tradition versus wing it? In doing any kind of spell work or any kind of...
Honey, I wing everything. You know, I know how to do things formally, and I think it's good for people to know how other people do things, or how other people say things were traditionally done. But I'm not sure things were traditionally done any which way. I think that you know, in ancient times people just winged it, and you know, they needed something done, they tended to it, and that's that. And I tend to handle things that way.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think when you move from oral tradition, training from an apprenticeship into reading a book, you have to then create tradition and create a structure that isn't normally there when you're being an apprentice. You're just doing training from somebody else. You're just listening, you know, learning at the feet of your nana. We were just talking about we were just talking about all the things you learned from your grandmother, and then when you started reading books, you went, "Oh, that's what she was doing." So I think there's a lot of things that we didn't know our parents were teaching us, because of course, you know, they must be stupid.
Well, yeah. You know, and I think too that but with magic, you know, a lot of people seem to think it's like a favorite old jacket that you put on and take off. Well, it's not. It's a lifestyle. You know, and you know that you've truly embraced that as a lifestyle when, and God, I won't even allow clothes that are not wrinkle free in my home anymore. Okay. Now I do have an iron, but if I have to iron anything, I use that time.
Of course, I need to check.
Yeah. There's actually a crease here somewhere. Yeah. I use that time to smooth out problems in my life as I'm ironing out wrinkles. You know, you find yourself noticing that here in our hemisphere, water actually goes down the drain in a clockwise manner. You drive down the road, you notice that, geez, that mica, that shit in the paper, that's sparkling, you know, and you know, and how you can use that to lift your day. I mean, there are all kinds of things that I think become second nature. You suddenly realize that electricity, when you flip on the light, is magical in and of itself, because when you cast a circle, when you call on all the elements, what you've actually done is created a field of static electricity. So you find that everything connects.
You create a circle. That brought to mind something I'm forgetting right in a second. I'll get on the back.
It's okay. You had a brain fart, but you'll remember in a little while.
I will.
Yeah.
It was kind of cool. What's left on it?
Yeah, interesting question. Something that my husband has come in contact with is he had spent a year with a group that was they like to change pantheons of gods every year.
Okay.
You know, to touch on, you know, to several different traditions around the world. There was one particular year where they immersed themselves into the Aztec tradition.
Oh my.
And while at the same time he was attending a Catholic law school. So he found himself, it was very hard reconciling those two energies because it was like those two civilizations didn't like each other.
Yeah.
And the only point of reconciliation he found was dealing with the Lady of Guadalupe.
What did he didn't do the Jesus loves the little children? He didn't try that?
But I relate that because I was wondering, you know, given that, I mean, you acknowledge tradition, but you also wing it, as you say. Do you find yourselves, you know, if you are working with or having to deal with two energies or deities from different traditions where the civilizations they belong to didn't like each other? And how has that been your experience, and what has your process been to reconcile that?
Okay, I tend to mix pantheons. I'm careful. Okay? For example, I would never ever do a ritual that I invited Athena and Arachne to together. Okay? Because Athena turned Arachne into a spider because she was jealous because her weaving was so much better than mine. Okay? So, I mean, there are things that I will not do. And I don't think there's any problem with mixing pantheons as long as you're careful about who you put into the same space. I happen to work with kind of a mixed trio. I work with Morrision, I work with Our Lady of Perpetual Help, and I work with the Great Goddess Incarnate. And I'm here to tell you, my three ladies work very well together. They like each other. Okay? They got no problem with each other. And I talk to them every night, and I talk to them every morning. But when, you know, it was, I can't even say that I chose them because they chose me. Now, I have refused to go into a formal circle before if I knew for a fact that they were going to call this particular deity or that particular deity, because I just wasn't comfortable with that. So, you know, and as a result, it got me out of doing formal ritual in public. Okay? Because there are a couple of reasons I won't do it, but for one thing, I don't want to be in a circle that I can't get out of until they dissolve the circle. You know, because some of this stuff turns into a theatrical experience as opposed to a regular little 20-minute ritual. And I'm standing there and I'm being mosquito bitten, and I'm hot, and I'm miserable, and I'm cranky, and that does nothing for the energy because all I want to do is zap those fools so they cut me a gate and let me out. Okay, so I won't do that. So I'm too old to put up with that boring kind of stuff. So how do you handle that, or have you had to?